By the 1930s, transport airplanes and bombers found their way into the doctrines of many nations. For the next step, the military started considering airborne forces. The idea of putting your troops in the enemy rear and getting the element of surprise was an appealing one. But for comprehensive action, airborne troops needed heavier weaponry, and that's how they arrived at the idea of airlifting armored vehicles. The Soviet Union was the first to make a move in this field. As early as in 1935, the TB-3 bombers managed to airlift a light tank, an armored car, and more than 1,000 troops. A year later, the Army tried to drop amphibian tanks from low-flying planes right into the water, but it backfired. The hulls of the machines burst from colliding with the water, and they sank. Still, these mishaps didn't cancel the whole idea of airlifting tanks. The Red Army was limited by a lack of suitable planes. The new PE-8 heavy bomber production was complicated and took a lot of effort on the industry side, which meant only a few were being made. Meanwhile, Europe had some developments of its own in the tank airlifting business. In 1938, a British company, Vickers, launched their Tetrarch production. They'd been originally meant to replace outdated light tanks, but the military soon discarded the entire class, so the new machines found a new use as airborne tanks. They were only employed in a real battle once, during the Normandy landing. Despite losing a few tanks to crashes, the whole operation was a success. The Tetrarch tanks confused enemy plans and made the Germans stop their counterattack, despite the fact that the tanks had hopelessly outdated armor and guns by the time of the operation. The New World military didn't miss this idea either, working on their own solutions. The American M22 Locust was originally developed as an airborne tank, light and compact. Although, as it turned out later, it wasn't compact enough. No American plane could fit one in its entirety. The engineers came up with an idea of carrying just the turret inside, attaching the chassis to the bottom outside. But for some reason the military didn't like it. Some of the Locusts were later given to the British. They were perfect to replace the old Tetrarch tanks, and England did have suitable transport airplanes. Much like the Tetrarch, the M22 was only used once in battle, in March 1945. One tank met a Panther head-on, right after the landing, and was destroyed. A few more were damaged during the landing, while others managed to support the airborne attack just fine. After the war, the French attempted to send their tanks to the skies. The future AMX-13 was meant to become an airborne tank. It turned out to be a very good light machine with a powerful 75mm gun, but all too heavy to be transported by air. Then in 1954, they started working on a tank with a weight of only 6 tons. The engineers managed to meet the unusually tough requirements and presented the light ELC BIS tank with a unique low profile. Both crew members, the driver and the commander, sat in the turret armed with a 90mm cannon. Due to crew placement, the turret could not rotate much on the move because the driver would lose the view of the road ahead. Both prototypes finished the tests, but in 1961, the project was closed. Nowadays, looking at mid-20th century airborne tanks, one can reach a conclusion that they were just playing around and wasting money. But you should keep in mind that all the drawbacks of those machines were a direct result of the harsh limits imposed by the capabilities of contemporary transport aircraft. The situation soon changed dramatically. Modern aviation can easily airlift a 50-ton MBT, let alone lighter vehicles, so there's no need for specialized small tanks anymore. Still, numerous engineering solutions created during the development of those tanks turned out to be useful later.